This One's Wife. Anyone seen Archie? Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. For this next panel, we're going to turn to one of the most urgent questions facing families today. What's happening to childhood? And how and what do we do to allow our children to just be children? Yes, you all know who said that. This One's Wife, as she took to the stage to introduce the second panel, how the great rewiring of childhood caused an international mental health crisis and how we can reverse it, at Project Healthy Minds just recently in New York City. This One's Wife went on to state, 3 years ago we had met with families whose worlds had been absolutely shattered. Parents who had lost children to social media-driven suicide. Others who had lost so many of their children to struggles with depression, anxiety, self-harm, all inflicted by online harms. What we learned in these moments is that these parents, they didn't just need therapy, they need the other parents who understood their very specific grief. And when they came together, they weren't just sharing stories, they're creating a movement. They turned their grief into advocacy, and when they let love fuel their fight for change, we saw tremendous impact. Thus, we have This One's Wife explaining that we have to address the question, what's happening to childhood? And what do we do to allow our children to just be children? Well, This One's Wife, I suppose you could go and do this. Yes, within a couple of days of standing on a stage and engaging in her usual fridge magnet platitude nonsense, This One's Wife demonstrates the compartmentalizing hypocrisy of her narcissism as she decides that in order to address the question of what's happening to children and how can we allow our children to just be children, she uses her daughter again as a prop. Archie, nowhere to be seen, more about that in a moment. But Lilibet joins This One's Wife in a photograph that's placed where? On social media. And a video which is placed where? On social media. Apparently she did so because it was International Girls' Day. Well, she could have just written about International Girls' Day, or perhaps didn't even need to say anything about it at all. But no. Once again, in order to assert control over the audience, to draw fuel from them by way of their response and to manage her facade, This One's Wife not only utilizes her daughter as a prop in a photograph and a video, but then directly demonstrates what a hypocrite she is as a consequence of 1 minute banging on about the necessity of allowing children to just be children and then using them as props. One wonders what on earth This One's Wife says to young Lilibet when these videos are being taken. Okay, what I want you to do is run across the lawn. Whatever you do, don't look at me! If you look at me, the bunny's going to get it! So just run, don't look, okay? Yes, Mama. Can you imagine the instruction that's being given? Because the natural inclination of a child when they do something is to look to their parent. Look at me. See what I'm doing? Is this right, Mummy? Look at me, Daddy. The child seeks validation, not in the way that a narcissist does, but simply because the child looks up to that parent. The parents are the child's world. And as part of their learning, they need that feedback from the parent to say, you're doing it right. Yes, that's correct. Because for the child, they're exploring the world, they're navigating it, and it's uncertain for them. Therefore, it is an absolutely natural and instinctive response of a child that when they're doing something, to look over at the parent. And therefore, what Lilibet is being instructed to do not only runs contrary to what she feels she ought to do as a child, But it also means that in order for that to happen, she is being conditioned. It goes against what she would instinctively respond with, and one wonders how many times it has to be filmed so that before she actually gets it right to the satisfaction of this one's wife, which again calls into question, are you allowing your child to be a child? No, you're not. You've reduced them to the condition of a performing individual. Run across there, but don't look at me. Make sure you keep your head looking in the other direction. Why? Don't ask questions, just do it. Why? Well, it might be that this one's wife potentially could say, we need to keep your identity hidden. Why? Well, to keep you safe. Why? Because there's crazy people out there. Why are they crazy? You can imagine the questions the child would answer. The child would ask, rather. Far simpler to just let them be a child and show themselves. Or, if you're that concerned about it, and we know that this one's wife isn't, but if you really were, you just wouldn't post your children on social media, simple as that. But this one's wife does, because the children are props, because she's entitled, she has no emotional empathy for them, and she's running out of options with regard to the use of things to cause people to respond to her. Well, once again, it's Lilibet that appears. You might say, well, that was logical given the fact that it was International Girls' Day. But it does then raise the question of, where's Archie got to? If my memory serves me correctly, the last time we saw Archie was when he was rolling around in the sand on the beach, when he was doing some surfing, and we're told that those pictures were actually from in the spring, not in the course of the summer when they actually made an appearance. So what's he been doing and where is he? This, of course, again, lends credence to the suggestion that Lilibet is the golden child and Archie is the scapegoat. That Lilibet is the one that is given preferential treatment, the extended and more exciting birthday, greater prominence in relation to social media postings. With Archie, well, when it's his birthday, he just gets a solitary picture of himself staring out to sea, looking like a forlorn and isolated character. That he asks, when's my birthday? That he is the individual that says, only if you want me to. That doesn't appear in the pictures as anywhere near as much as Lilibet does. The fact that he hasn't been seen for some time, I'm not suggesting anything nefarious or unsavoury with regard to the whereabouts of the little fella, but moreover it's indicative of the way that this one's wife sees them, that they are of course both objects, but put simply, Lilibet good object, Archie not so good object, or bad object, and therefore Lilibet is the one that's utilised more often for the purposes of placing her in social media postings. Yet again, this one's wife demonstrates what a hypocrite she is. She demonstrates her lack of emotional empathy for the child by utilising the child as a prop, and of course the other child seems to be forgotten about, demonstrating what she truly thinks about that individual, namely, he doesn't matter unless she needs him to matter for her own purposes. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.